Chancellor, you're here in Scotland to make the economic case for Scotland in the Union, but let me put it to you that Scotland could be better off with independence.
Well, my argument is that Scotland is better together with the rest of the United Kingdom, that as part of the United Kingdom, Scotland can be more prosperous, more jobs can be created. We've had 85,000 new private sector jobs in Scotland over the last couple of years. And companies like this here in Glasgow can sell across the world because they're in a very competitive UK economy.
I think I can smell shite.
But of course, on a number of things like employment levels, growth levels, these are fundamentally, are they not, a function of economic policy, not of constitutional structures?
Well, of course, economic policy in part flows from your constitutional structures. Let me give you some very basic questions that Alex Salmond can't answer at the moment. How would Scotland operate its currency? Would it
He said he'll keep the pound.
Well, he says he'll keep the pound, but how is he going to operate monetary arrangements with the rest of the United Kingdom, with the Bank of England?
He said the Bank of England will be a lender of last resort.
Well, says who? Says Alex Salmond. You know, he has not been able to answer basic questions about how an independent country is able to operate monetary policy alongside another independent country.
So are you therefore saying that if Alex Salmond's ambition is to have the pound and the Bank of England as a lender of last resort, that you, as the UK government, would block that in any negotiation?
No, I'm saying Alex Salmond wants to take us down this path of an independent Scotland, and he can't answer basic questions about how monetary
Scotland with
policy
independence could have the pound, isn't it?
What he can't answer is how monetary policy would operate. In other words,
it's feasible that Scotland could have the pound, isn't it?
How is it possible to operate in one country a separate economic policy from another country which has a separate economic policy, sharing the same currency, when you can see in the Eurozone they've been trying to do that, they have failed, and what they're trying to do is trying to...
any ambitions by the Scottish Government not to have the pound?
Let me finish the point I'm making. If you look at the Eurozone, they are having to integrate their budget policies. They're having to control each other's budgets. They're having to supervise each other's economic policies. Alex Salmond says, I want to have a separate economic policy, but I want to have the same currency. And that doesn't make sense.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
Mr Salmond would say that unionist politicians are full of scare stories. He will point out that there's quite a lot of inward investment in Scotland. In fact, he would say that there is more inward investment coming to Scotland than to other parts of the UK. And when we go along and cover these press conferences and we ask chief executives, was the constitutional debate in this country a factor in your decision? They say no.
Well, the first thing I'd say is that tonight in Glasgow, the head of the UK CBI, the business organisation, is saying that the uncertainty is doing economic damage and damaging investment intentions.
He doesn't speak for every business, does he?
And businesses, of course, have got to make their own decisions. But what the business community is saying pretty clearly is they want the uncertainty resolved. And look, I've got a very straightforward offer. David Cameron and the British government have a very straightforward offer to Alex Salmond. Let's resolve the issue. Let's have that referendum, make it legal, fair and decisive. Let's do it in the autumn of 2014, which is when Alex Salmond wants it. Let's sit down. Let's have that legal, fair and decisive.
Here's a straightforward question for you, Chancellor.
And we will solve it.
Has any chief executive said they will not invest in Scotland because of the prospects of independence?
Well, over the last couple of years, I have had chief executives talk to me.
Who?
I'm not going to go into the specific details of my conversations.
They've actually said we're not investing in Scotland.
I've had specific conversations with chief executives of large global firms who have asked me about the constitutional future of Scotland.
That's slightly different.
That's
slightly different.
Well, and it has raised concerns with them.
So were they planning to invest in Scotland?
Well, these are large firms, and you have today, you don't need to take my word for it.
Well, that's definitely shite.
You have the head of the CBI here in Glasgow making exactly the same argument. So, look, what I would say is we can deal with this. There is a deal to be done. Let's do it. Let's have the discussion this autumn. Let's do the deal. Let's have the referendum in the autumn of 2014. And I think once we are clear that there is going to be the referendum and we know what the single question is and it's about independence, yes or no, then Alex Salmond can answer questions as to why interest rates wouldn't go up in an independent Scotland, or how Scotland could operate its own economic policy but share a currency with another country, how Scotland could have the energy sector it does without the UK customer base? Alex Salmond can't answer any of these questions, and if he can't answer these basic questions, I think the Scottish people are entitled to ask him a pretty basic question about the path he's leading Scotland
One
down.
final question. The referendum is planned for 2014. The UK government has constantly said that the Scottish Parliament does not have the constitutional legal authority to hold that plebiscite. Now, negotiations are underway. There is no possibility whatsoever that the UK government could say you're not getting a Section 30 order.
We are saying we want to give Scotland the Section 30 order, we want to give the Scottish Parliament the legal...
There's no way you won't give it to them.
We want to give Scotland the legal constitutional power to have that single question referendum.
There's no way you're going to block this, is there?
If they want a single question referendum, the back end of 2014, we're ready to sit down and do the deal.
Shite. Oh yes, that's shite.